I think we're now live, and I think people can hear us. So yeah, Andrea is one of our trainee solicitors who's assisting me with this, and she's just the other side of the office. So she's accepted a number of you attendees onto this now. We're doing a video recording which will be available after this for people you know who might have missed the webinar. Thanks everyone for logging on and attending this. If you've got any questions as we go through, please message them in, type your messages through Zoom, and we'll keep a record. We'll see those, and we'll either answer them in the course of this presentation, as it were, or wait to the end and we'll deal with the questions there. So yeah, first off, I'll just give you a bit of an introduction background to who we are. So Andrea, if you put there's just 6 short slides we'll go through briefly just to get an understanding of who we are, our history, and how we operate. Don't know if those can come up. Okay, so a brief introduction. Jonathan Lee Network, we're now an SRA regulated firm. For a few years, it was me as a self-employed consultant solicitor practicing under the umbrella of a few other firms, but mostly a small virtual law firm called the London Law Practice, which is now merged with another firm and is no longer. You can see in that slide there's an image of the viaduct outside Haywards Heath, which is where we're based. So history, as sort of mentioned, yeah, for a number of years I started off trained at Clyde & Co, worked at a couple of city firms after that, a little bit disillusioned with the city life, was made redundant as part of the then 2008 economic crash, banking fallout, as it were. I remember Singer Friedlander was an Icelandic bank that was one of our main clients, which suddenly disappeared overnight at the firm I was at. So I then went and joined a complete change of scenery, went and joined a firm down in Cornwall, where I was just left to my own devices and had my own client load and a whole mix of different work for private companies, entrepreneurs, broad mix of what you might call corporate commercial work. So that gave me the confidence, I think, to want to do things on my own, to move back from Cornwall to Sussex and start up on my own. But I then realised that was not as straightforward as I thought. I then discovered what the world of being a consultant solicitor involved and working under the umbrella of another firm, and looked into that. So I was at a small firm in London for a while after trying to go back into employment, thinking that was the best course. But after a year, I thought, no, that's not working. I'm better off doing my own thing. Yeah, I think I was attracted to the freedom and the flexibility, and yeah, initially to be able to work from home, have a home office, have my own client base, but eventually, like what we're doing now, build it into an actual business and start growing the retained team and creating business. Yeah, we're now, I think we've got a retained team in Haywards Heath, who are mostly working from a big open plan office, so at serviced office block near the station. So there's about 6 or 7 of us now, and a couple more joining later this year. And then there's what we call a network of about 5 or 6, I think, self-employed consultant solicitors that we know. Most of them we've known for a number of years. I know through working for London Law Practice previously, who we sort of regularly work with almost on a day-to-day basis. So one covers commercial property, for example, one covers intellectual property, one covers employment and commercial litigation, and one covers wills and probate, which is the only solicitor we have who does private client work, mostly with business focused. So yeah, we have a wide network of people we also refer work to outside of the firm as such, including international associates, outside of the UK, where some of our work comes from, where we refer some work where we need to. Just going back to the previous slide, although you don't need to go back, Andrea, but yeah, the name, the Jonathan Lee Network, was originally sort of chosen because I put a lot of work right at the outset into the website as a way to generate leads. But you know, I only ever wanted to sort of be on my own, have that freelance lifestyle. So the network was a way to market myself as being a point of contact that could then refer work to other law firms and other lawyers. So the model in the early years was taking the sort of referral fee where I could do referring the work into where I was a consultant of other law firms and taking that referral fee. But that worked well to a degree, but it got to a point where I was just constantly spending my time turning work away and became unsustainable. And then that led us to starting our own firm. So yeah, we've got a relatively modern and lean setup where the office costs and overheads are a lot less where we are in Haywards Heath, and London's suddenly become very unfashionable. Although you know it's nearby, we can hop on the train easily, and we have done so every now and again for new client meetings where we need to do that to win work in respect of a substantial new matter. But increasingly that's becoming less and less common, and people, particularly with Zoom and video conference, that we found that's made a really positive difference to our business, and people having that next best thing to a face-to-face meeting, physical meeting, is to see the whites of your eyes, as it were, by video conference. And people of all ages now are very comfortable with that, including the older, wealthier clients we might have. How we operate, we always offer like a free initial phone consultation with new clients, new leads, so that we can work out exactly what their issues are and how we can help. Then that allows us to then provide a written quote and or refer them to other solicitors or law firms who are more appropriate. We do a lot of work for startups and SMEs generally. A lot of work we can do on fixed fee basis. Increasingly, we do work just on a time incurred estimate only basis as our relationship with clients improves and they get bigger, etc. Services outlined on this slide. Excuse me, just having some water. So first one, equity and debt investments. That's mostly equity, really. We do a lot of work with startups raising money, so particularly relating to the SCIS and EIS tax reliefs. That's become a real niche for us, where we generate a lot of our work, and that allows us to get to the point where companies start to grow, sometimes quite quickly. They raise money, they start to do other things, and they need other legal services as well. So that's allowing us to sort of broaden out and get involved with other areas of legal work as well. We do a lot of small mergers and acquisitions, sometimes a few bigger things, but mostly people come to us for the small things, which we're very happy to do. Commercial property, lots of things to do with new leases, for example, and then dealing with commercial property as part of a business sale, for example, or getting involved in the sale of a pub or a cafe, that type of work. That relates quite often to the mergers and acquisitions work we do. IP and commercial contracts, so we deal with all variety of commercial contracts. We even have a retainer with an AIM-listed client to do their commercial contracts. It's principally a whole load of different supply of services agreements that they're signing up to with their clients. And intellectual property, we don't do specialist things like patents per se, but we advise on trademarks and IP, copyright software generally. Share incentive schemes, particularly the EMI share option scheme, which comes up a lot for startups, is another strong niche of ours, and whatever other equity arrangements people might want to put in place with consultants or employees. And then we do a lot of, we don't really do so much contentious work, or that's increasing all the time, but we advise on and help resolve a lot of shareholder disputes, which is principally ends up us advising on the buyout of typically a minority shareholder who is also a director and who is leaving the company. So that's an overview of the main services. As I say, we're also getting involved in advice on other areas which relate to the specialisms of our consultant solicitors. So, for example, one of the recent consultant solicitors who joined us, Philippa, is a tax specialist. So she advises on all areas of corporate tax mostly, and that dovetails and works quite nicely with the work we do. So just some examples quickly of the work we've done recently. So the Patat is a French startup restaurant burger company, and we've been with them from the start. They've got some investment from the Saudi fund, food sort of focused fund, and they've opened a restaurant in Camden. And we've dealt with all the investment and buyouts of various shareholders who left, now issues with employees they're having, and commercial contracts. We put together a little contract the other week for them to buy a food van, as it were. So all sorts of things relating to them. Increasingly dealing with property side of things. So Cookfield Golf Course is local to us, and we were introduced by a local accountant and advised on the property and business aspects of the acquisition of the golf course, including the freehold property and the business aspects. The biggest thing I think we've done to date was which came through our website, was the sale of a 70-plus-year-old property investment company with commercial and residential properties in a block just off Sloane Square, and that sold for several million. That was obviously a very important deal for the two families who own the shares in the investment company, and they wanted to liquidate their wealth, as it were, so that it could be more easily passed on to their children. And that involved a few of us working together on that to complete it. Ski lifts is a really old, long-standing client of ours, which grew through cash flow for a number of years. It started by a guy with his credit card and just getting a bunch of his mates who he met traveling to work on it. And now they've raised VC investment rounds, a couple recently, which we've advised on, and now accelerating their growth. And again, we're getting involved in advising on other areas that relate to their business. Finally, Addition Capital is an EIS nominee fund. Only a client of ours to some extent, but more so as a referral source. They commonly invest large 1 million plus amounts in, let's say, sort of mature startups or proven startups. And they came through our website, and they refer clients to us for SEIS, EIS advance assurance process before they then invest in those startups. Again, that's a great point of contact for us. It allows us to build a relationship with those startups who are very good clients. And then we get further work from them as well, quite often, including in relation to, for example, new leases they might be taking out for their business. Then final slide. It's a bit out of date now, but it took us a while to get there. We were operating under the SRA umbrella of insurance and regulatory umbrella of London Law Practice, a small virtual firm, for quite a while as we grew our team. So before we only started trading as our own SRA regulated firm on the 1st of May, I think, last year, 2019. But before that, we had a couple of paralegals who were employed by us, as well as a solicitor who indirectly employed by us. We had to, because we couldn't employ a solicitor directly. Instead, she was employed for a couple of years by the London Law Practice, but then we had a separate agreement with the London Law Practice whereby she worked exclusively for us on our matters. So that was a great arrangement, which you can do with your consultant solicitor. You can grow your team like that and operate under the umbrella of another firm until you get to the point where it makes both financial and practical sense to take that jump and operate your own SRA regulated firm. So the last 2 years or so, it's been a sort of transition for me, moving from spare bedroom at home to tiny little office that was £250 a month rent to our much bigger office now, which is a bit nicer and a bit more expensive. But over that time, we've sort of grown the team, both the retained team and self-employed consultants, and our turnover's increased. I think last time I checked, maybe sort of sixfold or so. We got to the point where we've even got, like, just after becoming a regulated firm, we even got a retainer with a public company, the AIM-listed software company. Being a regulated firm now allowed us to offer training contracts to our paralegals. So we've got 3 trainee solicitors now who joined us as paralegals. We can employ solicitors directly. We can engage with and contract with self-employed consultant solicitors directly, which we've been able to do and have grown nicely since we became a regulated firm last year. A little bit of a flat line in turnover given the impact of the lockdown period, but we've seen sort of a big increase in work since the beginning of June, and so hopefully we're going to sort of grow strongly again for the last 6 months of the year. So as I say, new office, and we've even found time to add some e-commerce functionality. So we've got a shop on our website that you might see. So that allows us to productize our know-how, I guess, and try and generate a bit of passive income. But as well, important good thing of that shop is that we can see who's downloading the products. We get their email addresses. So occasionally where we see somebody's downloading something that could be related to something that's quite valuable, part of a bigger deal, we can message them, ask if they want to call to see how we might be able to help them. And I think last month that led to legal work, us doing work on a time incurred basis, equating to about sort of £7,000, I think. So that was a good result in that respect. So yeah, I've just probably gone through that introduction take a bit longer than I thought, but yeah, I'll now go. Oh, that's the last slide, but yeah, any questions, sort of ping them through Zoom, and we'll deal with it at the end. Andrea, I can't sort of see any questions that are coming up at the moment. Okay, so far I can only see somebody asking, will you be sending this recording out to us? Yeah, I'm sure we can do that, or we will do that afterwards. But if anyone else has got any questions, please sort of send them through now. Great. So yeah, anyone who hasn't connected already, you can find me on LinkedIn. That gives an overview. You can see my career history, the type of work we do, a bit of information about the firm. Find me personally on Instagram. We've got a company Facebook page, which you might find useful to like, follow that, and learn a bit more about who we are and what we get up to. Obviously, doing this, we're on the lookout for consultant solicitors to join us. So, you know, if you've got your own client base, or you're in the process of developing one, this is an attractive way for you to operate, then yeah, please do get in touch. Send us your CV or your link to your LinkedIn profile, covering email, letter, and then we can arrange a call in due course. So yeah, very briefly, there's an article on our website. If you search online on Google, the benefits of being a consultant self-employed solicitor, that's got a whole load of reasons, I think, which were kind of in my head, which led to me making the jump to working on this basis. I think I always had in mind when I chose law that it was something in the long term I wanted to. I like that idea of having sort of your own sort of small law firm, that kind of image of the high street solicitor kind of thing, and that the whole city career was maybe not for me in the long term. But then, you know, I guess sort of career-wise, it really never worked out for me as an employee, whether because I was being let go a couple of times, or whether it was at firms where I was really quite enjoying myself, but there wasn't really any decent career progression. And for example, in Cornwall, I didn't want to stay down in Cornwall for the rest of my career. And in the firm where I was only at for a year, salary wasn't really high enough to justify staying there. So I got to the point where I thought, well, I'm better off sort of giving it a go on my own, and it sort of worked out really from the start. It took a while to get going, but when you look back, you give it a good go of 6 months, a year, you look back after a year and you know, made good progress over the year. Although it's a little bit frustrating when it's just you on your own. If you're really looking to grow a business, unless you've got capital, you know, it takes a while to get to the point like we did, where yeah, you've got good cash flow, you reinvest it, then you can grow your team. So now we're at a good point where we can grow from here. So I won't bother going into those reasons, other than if you do read that article called The Benefits of Being a Consultant Self-Employed Solicitor, if you get to the end of it, it will hopefully leave you in a positive frame of mind about, hey, this might be the right way to go, and this might be you know, if you're not happy where you are employed, if you're for whatever reason, then it will make you feel more positive about making a jump to working on this basis. So I'll just go through sort of the presentation I have here, just a few points. If you haven't started to work on a self-employed basis already, then just a few points about preparation before leaving employment. One would be reading books that get you into that entrepreneurial frame of mind. I think I found that. I think when I moved down to Cornwall, I came across a lot of people who were working for themselves, which I hadn't really done in London. And I went to sort of entrepreneurial type conferences, read books. A few are Purple Cow and Small is the New Big by Seth Godin. That sort of makes you feel quite enthusiastic about doing your own things and gives you ideas in the process. Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. That was an interesting book. In terms of content marketing and developing your presence online, which is really key, increasingly key for any business, particularly law now, although a lot of lawyers aren't very good at it. Then 2 books written by an American author called Mark Schaefer are really good. One is called The Content Code, and another which is more on obviously content, and the other is called Return on Influence, which is more relating to the use of social media, but both I found very sort of insightful. They're probably a few years out of date now, but hopefully they would have been updated anyway, or they're still relevant. Build up your LinkedIn presence, flesh out every single aspect, make it stand out, ask for recommendations for everyone you do any work for, connect with lots of relevant people. Every time, put some thought into who you connect with. My view is there's value in every connection, but I think if you are going to connect with somebody, when you click that connect button, you can put a little message with it. So make sure that message really stands out and you give a really good, interesting reason why you want to connect with that person, and that person will think it's useful, one, to connect with you, and two, more likely to have you in mind over the long term for whatever reason. Just produce a marketing plan, just really simple, but it will just help focus the mind on what you can or should be doing to start generating work once you're out of that sort of employment scene, as it were. When I was obviously, well, like most people, some people might be lucky, they might already have their client base and they might be busy from day one. Others maybe more like me, where I had sort of a few little bits of work that came my way eventually, but generally the first month I just put a website together, didn't really have any work coming in, and it sort of started to kick off from there. But the first year of employment, self-employment rather, allowed me to do lots of networking, go to lots of events, meet lots of people, coffees, what have you, wherever there might be useful connection. Go to the accountancy thing, might be good referral sources, or whatever's relevant to your practice areas. But that I don't really have time to do that anymore because I'm too busy with the client work. But having done that even though that was several years ago now, a lot of work we do now and people who get in touch out of the blue are people who I took the time or who also took the time to meet me in that first year. So all of that networking, you never quite know when it's going to come off, but it definitely definitely works for you in the long run. Also meet with the virtual law firms that you could join. There's so many now. Do a bit of research. I would say there's some bias, but I think like myself choosing to work with the London law practice in the end, there are sort of good benefits that I saw as preferable to working with the small virtual law firms than the bigger ones, where you might not get the right sort of service and support as a consultant solicitor, and you might find the bureaucracy and the admin a bit too heavy-handed. But speak to several, as well as the virtual law firms. Don't forget that there are many small traditional law firms or modern law firms who won't have a lawyer on it, or they won't be able to afford a lawyer to do your practice area or cover your practice area. So, for example, there was one called Adams Law in the East End, who I went to. I don't know how I contacted him in the end, but we struck up quite a good relationship with the senior partner. He tried to employ a corporate solicitor to do the work that came in, but there wasn't really enough of it to justify that. And instead, for the first year of self-employment, I got quite a few good leads from him. I did the work under his umbrella as one of his solicitors, albeit not in the office where all the other solicitors were. So, I mean, you can do, if you want, you can contract with a whole load of different law firms all at the same time. It gets quite difficult to manage. I only did my work through the London law practice for the last few years. I did then refer lots of other matters to the other firms, but I didn't have to sort of engage with them. I just tried to collect a referral fee every now and again as one of their consultant solicitors, but not somebody who did work through their own work through the firm. Yeah, so starting off, first year of self-employment, set up a service company that you contract through and a bank account. No need to register for VAT from the start. The VAT threshold is 85,000. I mean, unless you've got really big clients or you're working all hours, you're not going to bill over that threshold, but you can have a really nice lifestyle and income, slightly below that eventually. So apart from the first year of trading, I think for the second, third, and fourth, my revenue was between 70 and 80, I think. And obviously trading through a limited company, putting your expenses through that, you have more money in your pocket, as it were, than if you were being paid equivalent salary or a salary that was quite a bit more. So yeah, financially it was good, and also you have that freedom and flexibility. I know some people who bill or they generate revenue a lot more than that, but for me, I was just focused on more the startup clients and building relationships with lots of different companies rather than just focus on doing the bigger work. Yeah, starting off, I mean, you can start off with a very competitive hourly rate. You can do work on a fixed fee basis, try and win that work, get that work through the door when you're quiet, if you need to. As mentioned, not everyone does this, or very few people do, but when you've got that time at the beginning, just produce a website. I mean, it was great for me. Use WordPress, keep it simple. Just pay a good designer, a few £100 to produce something that looks attractive. That will really help you eventually generate work. Of all the ways to generate work, I think content and organic, people finding you through organic search, has been definitely the best way of generating decent new leads. Of course, you get things that you get time wasters and people that you wouldn't you don't necessarily want to take on as clients, but still it's been the most useful thing to do. Yeah, as I say, just do lots of networking, go and meet a whole load of people to the extent you've got the time. Otherwise, spend that time on the website producing content, and all of that will pay off in the long run, or in the short and medium term as well. I organised a lot of events, which I found very useful. At the time, Google Campus was quite new in London, and they allowed you to use their big event space there for free if you were doing an event that was targeted at startups. Fortunately, that's no longer. It's become a real hassle to book it, costs money, all the rest of it. And since the last 2-3 years, haven't done any events, or maybe just 1 or 2 because it's just too much hassle otherwise. But again, now with webinars and Zoom, it's like a really great leveler. And just doing this, we've got had 100+ signups. Much easier to do than actual events. So that's sort of a great way. We're in the process now. We've sort of cottoned onto it a bit slowly, but we're in the process now of organising a whole series of webinars. Like the next one is focused on small company M&A work in a downturn, and we've already got some really interesting people that I've been trying to get hold of or trying to connect with for ages, like business brokers and things who have signed up to that. So hopefully that's really going to pay off as well. Yeah, there's also, to a lesser degree, I think there's freelance websites like Upwork and People Per Hour. Some people in the first year particularly do sign up to those as legal service providers and try and win some work. You will do, but it's really, you get really sort of low level people who are very cost sensitive through that. So those freelance websites, I wouldn't focus too much time on trying to win or generate work through it, but they're more useful later on to find people that you want to outsource services to. So those websites were fantastic as me as a freelancer, trying to sort of find people to collaborate with that I could contract certain things to, for example, to help me to help get someone to design like an invite, or little things like that, which have made like a big difference to business, but which I could do myself, or afford to pay someone not to otherwise do. And also found through Upwork, I think it was, found a solicitor who's now one of our consultant solicitors, who at the time was just trying to pick up work. She'd moved to Canada. She'd been at a good firm in London beforehand, trying to pick up IP and commercial contracts work through the internet. But so she was great for me to then white label contract the work to her for commercial contracts that I was doing, and then she'd send the work to me. I'd then send it to the client, so the client thought it was me doing the work. And she did it to a very good high level. We worked alongside each other on some things, and then we split the fees on a 50-50 or whatever basis. So that was a good way to work together in the early years. Now she's a self-employed, it's one of our consultants, and we pass her work. She does it through through our firm and through our systems. So yeah, second year of self-employment onwards, I think second year onwards, you start to track the larger jobs and referral fees, and that you'll be in a position to refer work to other consultants. Most firms, virtual firms, you get a 15% referral fee. The strategy I adopted for the second year on was to take the small, simple things myself, and then the bigger things that would generate bigger fees. I didn't want to be stuck down just dealing with one client for months on end, so I'd refer that work to another, for example, corporate solicitor for a company sale at the London Law Practice or one of the other firms I sent work to, and then that allowed me to get a decent sum, 15% referral fee through that amount, but then I'd be able to get good revenue from the smaller jobs that I was doing myself, which then allowed me to build relationships with a larger number of clients in the process. Thinking about sort of the long term. Yeah, I mean, it's possible to get retainers like we've done recently over the last year for large companies like UK and overseas PLCs. You can get a retainer, like where we've been successful is you offer a reduced hourly rate for a defined number of hours that they commit to and pay in advance at the start of each month. So for them, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of that big company, it works out less than hiring someone full time. Because even if they hire someone full time, they probably only need, like, for example, 60 or 80 hours a month of a lawyer's time. So you can make it quite attractive for them, particularly when they factor in employer taxes and all the rest of it. Plus, they've got the free flexibility; they can end it any time, and they get a solicitor who's more experienced than someone they might otherwise be able to afford, to hire, who'd be more junior. Yeah. I mean, you can always get in really low at the outset, and then make it clear that you have a fee review after 3 months or 6 months. If it lasts that long, and that gives you the time to really build a relationship, it becomes harder for them to go elsewhere once you've done a good job and you're kind of integrated into the company. So the retainer we've got with the AIM listed company, it's been going on for over 12 months now, but the longer it goes on, it was only meant to be like 2-3 months before they found another in-house lawyer at the start. But the longer it goes on, it's sort of harder for them to go elsewhere if we continue to do a good job. Next heading, where to work. Home office. I guess I had my everything set up nicely in a spare room at home when I was in London to begin with, and then when I moved down to Sussex. Yeah, I found co-working spaces have worked really well for other people, because you get to meet lots of other business people, even though you might not go and work there every day. When I was working from home in London, I spent, just for a change of scenery, I went and worked in a local pub or a cafe sort of between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock when it was quiet and there was no one in there. And I just found that was like a good way just to focus the mind for a few hours and have a change of scenery. Serviced offices are great. Particularly outside of London, office space is much cheaper. As I say, the first office we moved into had room for 4 people, but in a roof above an estate agent's. It wasn't pretty, but yeah, it was about £250 a month or something. So it wasn't really too much of an overhead to bear. Next heading, IT equipment. That's one of the good things about being self-employed. Buy all your IT equipment. I found it frustrating having rubbish IT at law firms, and you couldn't get anyone to upgrade anything for you. So you can go out and buy yourself fast PC, 2 monitors, whatever software that's going to help you do your job. You use all these things like Zoom and Google Suite account off Google Drive, etc., or Dropbox. All these things that are really useful and low-cost tools, but better than things that used to cost a lot more previously. We've got, like other virtual firms, we've got our own sort of case management software stroke time recording system. Some of them are quite clunky and not user-friendly. That I find the larger the firm you're at, the harder it is there for their IT system to be used. So we've got a very light touch one called Action Steps, a modern New Zealand one that allows us to, allows us to easily sort of organise the team and keep a record of the matters we're working on, and collaborate as needed. What else? So yeah, just a few points. I might repeat some of these, but heading is maximising take-home pay. As I say, you've got your own limited company, all sorts of expenses. You can put that through, including sort of half of the cost where you live. That's where your home office is. Mobile phone bill, for example, petrol, whatever it might be to increase sort of the money in your pocket, as it were. Tax, if you're trading through a limited company, you've got your tax-free salary amount, paying a certain lower amount of tax through then dividends paid on top of that, and then corporation tax off that at 19%. So it's not as much of a change as it was before, but generally you pay less tax, or a little less tax than you would do if you're an employee on PAYE. Another way I found of maximizing income is I did sort of unreserved legal work, like reviewing commercial contracts, for example, directly through my own service company with a separate engagement letter, making it clear that I wasn't doing the work through a regulated firm, and putting relevant disclaimers in there. And as a result, the hourly rate was less. But if they wanted me to, I could still do the same work through the regulated firm, but it would be more as a result. So that allowed me to do sort of the really simple jobs on the side, as it were, through my own service company, while having that relationship with the virtual firm for anything where I needed to use the client account, or where it was just a bigger matter with lawyers on the other side, all the rest of it, where I could just easily do the work through the regulated firm. Like I mentioned before, with a solicitor law in Canada, find online more junior self-employed solicitors who are more sort of starting out earlier, and they can work remotely, so that you can work with them on a sort of white label basis, or refer on a fee share basis, or however you structure it. And yeah, just generally referring work to other team members and at the virtual firm, and generating passive income that way. So having the more you build your client base, the more you can have the ability to refer work to other solicitors, consultant solicitors at the virtual firm, and sometimes, for example, a couple of months I had a situation where others were billing 20,000 plus on matters that I referred, which generated good sort of passive income in terms of that 15% referral fee. And also, you've obviously got, you're working in a home office, you've got no overheads to go against it. You can, like some people, I know somebody who's been with Keystone Law since the beginning, really good corporate lawyer. Somehow he manages to work as a consultant solicitor under the umbrella of, I think, at least 4 different firms, or maybe more than that now. Most of his work or his own clients is done through Keystone Law, but he still contracts and acts as a consultant of these other firms who pass him work, and he does that work. Logs them through their system with their email address through his home office in Sussex, and does the work through them. So that's possible to have relationships with and contract with with other firms. So have partner with more than just one. So a couple more areas I've just mentioned before answering a few questions at the end. Marketing, so content, I'd say, is the best thing to focus on. Make it user friendly, aim to beat what is out there, check on what's out on Google for whatever search terms and similar topics and questions that people are looking for answers for. Do some keyword research, have titles of your articles that match what people are searching for. Don't focus just on case law updates and things like that, which isn't really going to generate work. For example, one of our articles is the title is how to apply for SCIS and EIS advance assurance, and that's just generated a whole load of work over the last sort of 4 or so years since we published it. And we've added detail to that as we've gone along. It started off as something really simple, but as we learn more, we add it to the article. So add lots of detail, lots of insight. Originally drafted, input your own experience. That people really like that. So when we have intro calls with people, that's what they say they really like, is that they've got your sort of own experience comes through what you've written. Lots of insightful, pragmatic advice. Link document downloads, video images, other pages linked to that same article, and that will help it go up organic search results on Google. So just generally focus on creating something of value that people will share and come back to, etc. Also, you can create a free, like with our e-commerce shop, without setting up the e-commerce shop. It's just quite simple to create something of value as like a free document download that people have to input their email address and details to download, and that gives you a really good opportunity to find out who they are, and then offer them, for example, as part of that, a free introductory call. That's a really good lead generator tactic. Another, when you're going to meet people, networking, or now if you're having Zoom calls instead, a good tip I found is connect on LinkedIn in advance, obviously, and find out who your mutual connections are. And then in that meeting, just run through those mutual connections. And then quite often you'll find that you have maybe 2 or 3 people in common that you both know really well. And that really helps solidify a relationship in a very short space of time. And for example, an accountant, a retired accountant of a really successful firm in North London I met once, who invited me to meet him. He did that, and I've been doing that ever since. But for example, we found out that the accountant who does our payroll was his nephew, which I would have never known otherwise, and that sort of helps increase the relationship there as well. Social media, I think that's a really good, useful part of marketing. Not as important as the content, but obviously the content works well if you can spread it on social media. As I mentioned, connect on LinkedIn with people, say something memorable in the original invite, make it compelling to connect with you, and respond, and for them to want to respond to your messages. Always phrase it as if there's something valuable in it for them. And if you can, maybe if it's something really high level, use mutual connections to make the introduction. Connect with people who can spread your content. So for example, we know the person who runs the Sussex Chamber of Commerce social media accounts, and she's now helping to, we just tweet her the link of the webinar we're doing on employment law and furloughing and redundancies, and she's now spreading it on their social media accounts really easily. All those kind of connections and relationships really good, work well on social media. Engage in conversations with those who are influential in your industries, particularly on LinkedIn now. People are really active on conversations on LinkedIn. Twitter, I don't really think it's sort of that worthwhile. I mean, I don't really use Twitter for business that much anymore, but it's still good getting your message out there. Check who's viewing your LinkedIn and send messages. Ask if it's worth having a no cost, no obligation 20-minute call. They might be a reason why they're checking out your profile. My view is always have an authentic and passionate voice. Don't be concerned about standing out from others and people seeing you as controversial, because you might have strong views. I think ultimately that kind of approach is actually going to win you work. You don't want to hide behind a rock, as it were. Cool. Okay, I'm almost sort of wrapping up now, and I've got a few questions I'll go on to. Yeah, don't be shy. I found Facebook really good for work. Not that I talk about work on Facebook, or that we've got the work focused Facebook page, Jonathan Lee Network. You'll see that we share some things of what we're up to there. But in terms of Facebook, personal Facebook account, my advice would be don't be shy about connecting with clients and contacts there. It's more personal. It's a stronger connection as a result. And yeah, I've just been instructed by a client who's recently raised £800,000 investment round, who I haven't done any work for a couple of years, but he said he's being kept amused by my Facebook posts, and as a result, that's why we've been in mind, and that seems to be sort of one of the reasons why he's decided to get in touch and just send us a whole load of commercial contracts work now, which we might not have got as a result. Twitter, I mean, I use that mainly to find and follow interesting people and access their key insight and knowledge. Engagement there takes a lot of time, and I just found it wasn't worth the bother. I think there's much more engagement now on LinkedIn. If you're going to contribute to open public conversations, it's more worthwhile there from a business perspective. Share interesting things, always give an original. You share anything on LinkedIn, don't just sort of aimlessly or just share it with no comment. Put some sort of really sort of stand out, opinionated, incisive comment on there that's going to generate people replying and people and or liking as well. But maybe liking is not so much important. It's more the engagement as well. YouTube video, that works really well for people. I mean, at the beginning of the website, we had a little video that the web designer did for me when I turned up one day at his office. And that worked really well at the beginning, but we haven't really bothered with it since. Again, maybe just so too busy with work, but we should really do more of that because it does work well for people. Okay, sort of wrapping up now. Support. I mean, the virtual firm you join with can offer quite a lot of good admin support. I'd check whether they've got junior fee earners and paralegals there as well, but of course you can just try out with a few firms at the beginning and see which one is easier to work with. Make sure they take care of sending out engagement letters and do all invoicing and debt collection, which they'll pretty much do anyway. I'd recommend hiring a PA for personal and business tasks. Really great. You get a virtual PA, flexible, someone that can grow with you, just starting off with a few hours, frees up your time massively. Wasn't something, it's more that somebody sort of twisted my arm at the beginning and I thought I'd give it a go, but it's been really invaluable since, and they've, PA Alice has sort of grown with us as well, does more and more work and is more and more sort of important to the business. But even just when it was me in the home office, just having someone that I could outsource a whole load of personal business tasks to, even though I didn't really have it in mind at the beginning, I found really, really useful. Find other mentors to an extent, chat to people who a bit further down the line, but also I think when you become a self-employed consultant, through the firms you work with, you'll meet lots of other self-employed consultants, and you learn from each other as you go along. And you, for example, most of the self-employed consultants we work with now are people that are kind of grown together with at the London law practice, and now the London law practice is no longer. They've now kind of jumped and sort of naturally, organically started working through us more. How to get paid. Last point, really. Yeah, fixed fees and cap fees. We always have those paid at the outset, paid up front. Really clearly define the limit of the fixed fee, and then make it clear anything further is time incurred work. If you're doing it work on an estimate time incurred basis, just get a decent sum of money on account. If you had a good introductory call, good 20 minutes, they've got confidence in you, then don't be shy on asking for a decent amount on account, or the whole of the fixed fee up front. In most cases, we find people will do that. Have a high hourly rate, then offer to discount it if people pay their invoices on time. Incorporate a success fee uplift if you're doing work where you can easily do that. For example, our advanced assurance applications with HMRC, we're starting to try and do that now for the SCIS, EIS work we do on some of the more complex ones. But yeah, sorry, I've droned on for probably longer than I thought I would do. Hopefully some people are still there, and this has been useful. Andrea's put some questions in front of me. First one is, I don't know who it's from, but it's, would solicitors be allowed to register as patent lawyers in the EU, learning the specialist trade skills such as IT courses that are industry specific? Would they be helpful in getting work from IT companies? Unfortunately, I can't answer this one because I don't really know much about patent law or patent lawyers, other than if anything like that comes up, I just refer it to patent attorneys that we know. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like a really niche specialism. I think yeah, you'd be wise just networking, speaking to people who are already patent solicitors and that they work, whether and finding those who work on a consultancy self-employed basis. Second question, do consultants work from home? You can, yeah, answer to that is yes, you can work from wherever you like. Most people, particularly in their first at the beginning, will work from home, or some work from home for many years. It depends what your circumstances are like. If you've got young kids and stuff going on at home, it might be quite difficult, and you might prefer to just get a nice little cheap quiet office around the corner from where you live, for example. You can work at get a membership to co-working space and work there some of the time as well, and just balance your time between working at home. But most people, if they've got all their setup and office set up at home, they might be prefer to work there. I did for a while work. I took sort of several weeks off and went traveling and worked on the road, as it were, a little bit. That was quite hard to do. Wouldn't recommend that, but went to India for a few weeks, and I didn't really do work per se, but just kept on top of the emails, mostly through my phone, and just allowed things to coordinate things and refer work to other lawyers, which generated, I think over that period, maybe £4,000 or £5,000 in referral fees to all the work I was forwarding on to other lawyers. And then I remember once in the Philippines, I had like a really, didn't want to work, but I had quite an important, good fee generating little company sale deal I was advising on. So I think I spent 2 or 3 days just sitting with my laptop with some nice drinks, looking out onto the beach from a cafe, working in quite a nice environment. But yeah, after doing that, I didn't really want to do that again. But yeah, of course, you can work from anywhere. Question 3, is it possible to be a consultant solicitor working alongside working in a law firm as a solicitor, or is this something that would vary depending on employment contract? Yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to employ you, they don't want you working for someone else, so I doubt that would be possible. But having said, you wouldn't be able to. I think you could. What you could do is you could be employed, but then you could have a separate, you could have a contract with, well, I don't know quite how you do it, but whoever's supplying, or well, yeah, broadly, I think that's a bit of a no. I think that'd be difficult to manage. I'm trying to think of circumstances in the past. I think there was a year where I worked as an employed solicitor for a small firm in London before I started working my own account, and I do remember that the firm in East London I had a connection with was referring work to me there, and then I'd do it through the firm that employed me, and then we just had an arrangement where we split the fees. So yeah, I guess it is possible having thinking back to that circumstance, but yeah, it all depends on what your employer's like, and I think that'd be something easy to do more easily if you're in a small law firm where the employer is sort of more flexible, plus there's more onus on you to generate work yourself rather than work being fed to you and you having to focus on work that's supplied to you. Question 4, I've worked in education for 25 years, working with parents and schools. I help with advocacy and policies. I decided to go and study law last year and I completed my LPC this summer. I'm now looking at specialising as an education lawyer. How can you help me with training contracts or paralegal work? Well, bit off topic. This is we're talking about maybe a bit further down your career, working as a consultant solicitor, but yeah, I mean, we don't get involved in that area of law, so unfortunately we can there's no sort of real avenue there for us offering paralegal training contract work, other than you'll need to do what everyone else in your position needs to do and find out all the law firms out there who do and specialize in that area, start to build relationships with people, connect on LinkedIn, find out how those firms work, what the culture is like, apply for any work experience placements officially or off the record, all that kind of thing, and start to build up a bit of a relevant track record of experience and work experience that will make you look more attractive and more on it and keener when it comes to applying for a training contract or paralegal position. So I'm just looking sort of, we've been is this the one if one is employed and wishes to consult?
So yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the question is, if one is employed and wishes to consult, would you not consider using the umbrella law firms, or would you consider not using the umbrella law firms and instead use the new SRA self-employed solicitor rules? Yeah, I looked at that, and I think the way that they've structured it, or the rules that they've put in place for the new SRA self-employed solicitor rules, just makes it just unnecessarily difficult and unattractive. So I've written about that a bit in our article on search Jonathan Lee, become a consultant self-employed solicitor, or just generally put that into Google, become a consultant self-employed solicitor, and it'll come up with the article. And a bit further, one of the headings you'll see in bold is SRA Authorization of Individuals Regulations 2019. And I think, so I've listed 4 reasons there where I think it just makes it unattractive, and if you were self-employed, it'd be preferable to operate as a consultant of a regulated law firm and not go down that route. And if you were going to go down that route, then you might as well just start off and have your own operate as your own regulated firm. Well, obviously there's all like the costs and compliance and admin issues of doing that, which you, like myself and others, you wouldn't necessarily want to do that from the get-go. So I mean, for example, one of the reasons here I've listed is that you have to practice and trade as an individual in your own name and can't develop your own separate business brand and trade through a service company, so as to limit your liability and maximize your income. Second point, I said you can't employ anyone in connection with the services that you provide, whereas no such restriction exists if you contract through a virtual firm. As I mentioned earlier, I employed 2 paralegals to assist me before, or the service company did, before we eventually started trading through our own regulated firm. 3, you need to take out and maintain your own indemnity insurance that covers both reserved and unreserved legal services you provide, as opposed to contracting through another firm where you operate under their insurance cover, and there's no need or requirement to have all that hassle and that potentially big expense of your own insurance policy, which when you look into it, you'll see is perhaps not very attractive. And then fourth, yeah, you can only hold client money when it relates to payment on account of costs and disbursements. You're unable to make use of the firm's client account to hold settlement sums and completion monies, which I kind of sort of found as key to being able to work on higher value matters. So that's another potential drawback. So yeah, study both, look into it further. But someone got in touch with us asking that sort of same question a few months ago, and she's now started to work. She's a family solicitor, so we weren't keen on her joining us just because we want to limit the private client work we do. But we put her in touch with another firm in the end, and she worked out that it was, even though she'd spent almost a year looking at it and got insurance policy quotes, indemnity insurance quote for working as a freelance regulated solicitor, she decided not to go down that route. And after a bit of advice and then looking into areas we mentioned, she joined and is very happy now as a consultant solicitor at one of the virtual law firms. Yeah, one more question that's come in. Can you say a bit more about your referral fee arrangements with other firms, especially from a regulatory perspective, disclosure to client permissions, keep money, etc. Okay, so yeah, so I will, in the end, for the last few years, I was a consultant of two firms, the London Law Practice, which I did all my work through, and then another one called My Business Council, which is still active, another smaller one, which is based in Birmingham. And it had at the time a couple of good corporate commercial lawyers who I could refer work to, and I know they'd get it done, etc. So even though I was a consultant solicitor of My Business Council, I didn't do my own work through it. I was just listed on the website. I signed a consultancy agreement. So like all the consultancy agreements, it mentions that if you refer work into us and you don't do the work, then you get a 15% referral fee. So under the consultancy agreement, I was just getting, when the money came in, I was getting paid that 15% referral fee as a consultant solicitor, and that there was never any need, because that's within the consultancy agreement. There's never any need to disclose that to the client. I don't think we ever really did over the years, and no clients fussed about that. They just want someone who can do the job and to agree a quote and transparent pricing. But slightly different to that was I did have some relationships with people who were outside of the virtual firms that I contracted with, and there was a sort of a guy I knew who did unreserved legal work, corporate commercial work through his own company, but on an unregulated basis, but very experienced, knew what he was doing and good at the work. And so I referred a stream of work to him, and we had a slightly higher 30% referral fee agreement, whereby he would remit 30% of what he billed to me in return for sending him those leads. And in that case, that we made sure that was transparent, and the client, just because we thought that was a better way of operating, we made sure that was transparent, and the client understood that before contracting with this other company. So yeah, as I say, you know, all of this thing about referral fees has sort of originated from, I think, personal injury work, where for whatever reason it became an issue, and you just have these companies who are just focused on referring work to lawyers. But if you, you know, as long as you're brokering legal work, you're putting people in touch with people who can do a good service, and they agree, and they're agreeing a fee. You know, they don't care what the underlying mechanics is of how the fee is being shared, whether that means whether you're operating as an employee within a law firm, and they don't, for example, need to know what salary you're on and what cut you're getting out of the fee that they're agreeing to, or whether you're a consultant on a fee share basis. So yeah, I think I've answered a few questions now. I don't think there are any more open. Oh, last question. What's that from?
It's from me.
All right, okay.
So if someone wants to become a self-employed solicitor and they don't know where to start, what do you recommend would be the first 2-3 things that they need to sort out or decide?
Where to start? Yeah, I think it's like a more of a gradual process. Certainly was for me. It took a number of years to work out that this was, you know, going to be for me, what was going to be involved, and see this as like a way to progress my career, and it's sort of, you know, worked out pretty well. So yeah, well, I think I would say this, but I think it's quite useful content on there. So read both our articles on our website, one called Become a Consultant Self-Employed Solicitor. There's lots of overview, lots of information there about how it works in practice. And then also within that article, at the end, you'll see a link to our other article on the benefits of being a self-employed solicitor. So that will help you understand and see, you know, why this might be worthwhile doing. But otherwise, I just guess sort of, you know, do lots of reading, network with people, connect with people who operate as consultant solicitors. I remember at the outset when I was first thinking about this, I spoke to someone who I came across actually when I was working at the firm in Cornwall, who worked in conjunction with us because she was offering her services as a self-employed construction lawyer, and we, on a property matter we were advising on, we had something come up where we needed to have that construction law specialism. So we thought, oh great, okay, we'll get in touch with her. And we added her on as a consultant. She worked alongside us on this matter for a couple of 2-3 months. So that sort of opened my eyes to that. And Anna Rabin, I think is her name. I think if you search online construction law consultant, you'll find her name. So when I left the firm in Cornwall, fixed a call with her. She was very helpful, you know, giving me an overview of how it's worked for her. And that sort of made me then look into more of the points she raised. And then there's another virtual law firm that's quite successful. They've grown quite a lot, called Setford Solicitors. So again, in the early days, I met the 2 cousins who operate that. Went to meet them. Decided it was wasn't the right time for me to work on that basis at that time. Plus, the fee share split isn't that great at Setford's, and it wasn't that attractive. But again, through all that process and speaking to them, learning more about how they work, it's all part of the general overview in your education, and then you start to find other virtual law firms. So go find out how they will operate. It's very similar, but there are nuances and differences, particularly on the fee share you can generate in return for the work that you either supply or that you take on, or the work that it's your client you do through the firm. And the more you know, the more you'll start thinking about how you might want to work on that basis and why that might be attractive for you. Does that answer your question, kind of, Andrea? Okay. Cool. I think we're at the end. I just realised that haven't been looking at the camera for a lot of this time, so I'm forgetting that there are people out there, kind of maybe looking at me instead of, as well as listening to me. But hopefully that's been useful to everyone. Yeah, feel free to get in touch. As I say, connect on LinkedIn, find our company, Jonathan Lee Network Facebook page, find me on Instagram, what have you. And yeah, it'd be great to connect. And if anyone's at the point where they think they're ready to work on this basis, you'll need your own client base, or be in a position to start generating one pretty soon after you start to work as a self-employed solicitor. Firms can supply you work, but you can't really count on that. Yeah, if you are in that position, we'd be very happy to fix the time to speak to you at some point, or now that we can kind of move around, welcome to come down and visit our office, and we'll take you out for coffee or go to the local pub, something like that. But yeah, thanks everyone for your time, and I hope you found this useful, and look forward to connecting with you online on LinkedIn, social media, and then maybe being in touch further down the line.